Coming up on Chapman News, more booster shots may be on the way. Moderna and J&J might get the green light. We'll have the very latest.
President Biden got elected on the promise of change, but many of his supporters don't see that happening. Is that why his approval ratings are at record lows? We'll talk to an expert.
And turmoil in the NFL. Coach John Gruden is out after sending offensive emails, and it's not even the worst thing revealed this week. What does this all mean for the NFL at large? All that and more on This Week on Chapman News.
From Dodge College of Film and Media Arts, this is Chapman News.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this week's edition of Chapman News. I'm Jack Hull.
And I'm Kinsley Rolfe. We begin today with breaking news on the COVID vaccine booster doses. An FDA advisory panel unanimously voted this morning to recommend a booster shot of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for people 18 years and older at least 2 months after their first dose. They also voted yesterday to recommend a booster of the Moderna vaccine for those 65 and older, as well as younger adults at high risk. The FDA typically follows the panel's advice, meaning the booster should be approved in the coming weeks. They already authorized Pfizer booster shots last month. In addition to the booster recommendations, the National Institute of Health released a study that suggested that J&J recipients should follow the mix and match approach of getting a booster shot with the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. The FDA panel discussed the mix and match issue today, but took no action on it.
Yesterday, the FDA said it will ask its outside experts to meet in late November to review Merck's antiviral COVID pill. There's likely won't be a decision on the pill until December. A trial found that Merck's pill cut the risk of hospitalization or death in half for some people.
A pill that people can take at home when you know that they're high risk and they've caught COVID, that has the possibility to be transformational.
Good news for travel. Fully vaccinated foreigners can enter the U.S. starting November 8th. This follows the Biden administration's announcement yesterday that they would be easing COVID restrictions at the Mexican and Canadian borders. In other COVID news, starting November 4th, LA's county's new vaccine mandate goes into effect. The mandate, the strictest in the nation, requires proof of vaccination for entrance into most indoor areas, including restaurants, bars, and gyms. How will this affect the unvaccinated? Our Adrian Mitchell reports on some illegal measures.
Unvaccinated people are facing an important choice: get vaccinated or get an illegal fake vaccine card. For one anonymous Chapman student, the choice was simple. She made an arrangement with a doctor who gave her a legitimate vaccine card but threw away her dose.
Yeah, I know it's illegal, and it really bothers me that it is, because I feel like you're taking people's right to choose what they do with their bodies away from them.
The student says that having a fake vaccine card is no different from having a fake ID, and she's willing to face repercussions if caught, but uses both because they give her access to what would otherwise be off limits. She emphasizes that she is wary of the government's push to get everyone vaccinated.
It's government overreach, and it's just directly dividing people by forcing people to have to show this thing instead of giving them the opportunity, like, hey, you know what, if you want to get sick, you take that risk, you get sick. If you don't want to get sick, then get the vaccine.
But infectious disease expert Jerica Lamb explains that getting vaccinated doesn't only protect yourself, it protects the people around you.
If I were fully vaccinated and I'm in the same restaurant as that individual who is unvaccinated, that individual may be sick and maybe a carrier and doesn't know it, and that individual can spread the virus to me, and I can have a breakthrough infection. I may not be as severely sick as that individual is, but I can carry it home to my family.
Dr. Lamb says the LA vaccine card mandate is similar to the 1968 seatbelt mandate, a necessity to protect people.
The mandates are very necessary if we want to get rid of this virus from our society. And why we're doing it now is because it's been over 1 year and we really need to dampen down this virus and eradicate it.
What remains to be seen is how strictly the LA mandate will be enforced. After all, it's easy to make a fake vaccine card, and workers at indoor businesses may not be able to spot the difference. I have a real vaccine card and a homemade fake vaccine card. I'll be going around asking strangers to tell me which one is real and which one is fake. You have 5 seconds to tell me which vaccine card is real and which is fake.
I don't know. They both look the same.
The one on the right is fake.
You are correct! You are incorrect! I'm so sorry about that. You are incorrect. I'm so sorry about that.
Gosh, no worries.
That one's fake. I'm guessing.
You are correct. You are incorrect. I'm so sorry.
That one.
The one on the right is real or fake?
Fake.
You are incorrect. It's real.
It's going to be the left.
The left one is real or fake?
Fake.
You are correct. Good job. Just because it's easy to fake a vaccine card doesn't mean you should. Falsifying a government seal is a federal crime, and a vaccine card has 2 seals, that of the CDC and of the Health and Human Services. If you're caught, you could face a fine and up to 5 years in prison. This is Adrienne Mitchell reporting for Chapman News.
Regarding the fake vaccine card used in this story, we plead the fifth. Please do not put us in jail.
Speaking of unvaccinated Americans, a new Kaiser Family Foundation survey found that 71% of unvaccinated respondents say the need for booster shots shows that initial vaccines aren't effective. However, all data continues to demonstrate that vaccines without boosters remain effective at preventing hospitalizations and deaths. I swear it's not COVID is a phrase that many of us find ourselves using now. Some people are starting to experience typical symptoms of flu season, but some of those are also symptomatic of COVID, so it can make for some awkward moments.
I always just kind of I try to silence my cough, so I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I swear, whenever I do that, I'm like, no, I can just look around and people are staring at me, and I'm like, no, I don't have COVID.
The CDC says there are many ways to stay healthy this flu season. They recommend avoiding close contact with people who are sick, and if you are sick, limit contact with others as much as possible. Also, cover your nose and mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Wash your hands often with soap and water. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces and objects that may be contaminated, and get the annual flu shot. Following those tips can help keep you not only from getting sick, but also avoid those awkward, I swear I don't have COVID moments.
President Biden announced that the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach will be operating 24/7 around the clock in response to the massive cargo backup. The ports have hit their 4th recorded backup in 3 weeks, but a shortage of dock workers and truck drivers is still an issue and will delay the unloading of the ships. Experts say to expect shipping delays and an increase in cost of shipping this holiday season. Producers also suggest buying gifts in October to avoid any late arrivals. More drama on Capitol Hill. Former Trump political advisor Steve Bannon may be facing criminal charges after refusing to testify before a House committee investigating the July 6th insurrection.
Political correspondent Peyton Bell joins us with more.
Thanks, Kinsley. As you know, a special House committee is investigating the Capitol Hill insurrection and former President Donald Trump's role in it. But this week, a number of top Trump aides are not showing up, defying legal subpoenas. Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, former Pentagon official Kash Patel, and former Trump advisor Steve Bannon all have until today to comply, but Trump's lawyer has told them not to cooperate. Bannon was the first no-show, and the committee is considering recommending criminal charges against him.
And if they don't show up and they don't cooperate, we will vote to hold them in criminal contempt in the House. We will refer that to the Justice Department and expect them to be prosecuted.
President Joe Biden has had a rough couple of weeks with his legislative agenda stalled in Congress and the chaotic departure from Afghanistan. Recent polls show his job approval rate is at a record low, after losing a lot of his support since July. Key groups such as blacks, Latinos, and women helped Joe Biden get elected, but now many of those voters say they're not happy with the president. In addition, polls indicate other traditionally dependable Democratic voters and some independents are disappointed too. Let's take a look at some new poll numbers. Real Clear Politics shows he has lost 10% of his support since July, going from 53% to just 43%. A new CNN poll shows voters evenly split in their approval of the president. Joining us now is Chapman political science professor John Compton. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Professor, we know that polls change, but what do you make of these latest numbers?
Well, if you look at the average of the major polls, it looks like President Biden's approval rating is down to about 44%, which is down about 10 points from where he was early in the summer in June and July. So it definitely appears that his approval rating has declined a bit. I do think it's important to keep these numbers in perspective. You know, all presidents see a lot of fluctuation over the course of their terms. And for purposes of comparison, President Trump, I think, was at about 38% approval at this point in his first term. President Trump ended up sort of bouncing between the high 30s and the mid 40s. And, given that the electorate is pretty polarized at this point in American history, I think we'll probably see something similar with Biden. In other words, I think, he has a floor. His numbers have a floor, and I would be very surprised if he drops below, the low 40s.
How do you explain the drop? And do you think people are disappointed in the progress President Biden is making?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, the crosstabs of the polls, his approval rating among Republicans was always low. So to explain the decline, it looks like he's lost a little bit of support among Democrats and more support among independents. So, part of that could be the fact that his legislative agenda seems to be stalled at the moment with the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation bill, not making much headway. But we also know that, most voters, particularly independents, don't really follow the details of, congressional haggling very carefully. So it's probably more likely that the decline is driven by concerns about COVID and the Delta wave of COVID, perhaps concerns about the economy and the economy not bouncing back as fast as was predicted, or concerns about inflation. So my guess is it has more to do with COVID and the economy than it does with the specifics of his legislative program.
Right, and with the midterm elections just a year away, do you see these numbers spelling trouble for Biden, or do you see things changing?
Well, as far as Democrats' prospects in 2022, I mean, they do face some challenges because the president's party tends to lose seats in midterm elections. The Senate map is a tough one for the Democrats. Republicans in the House are probably going to pick up a couple seats just through redistricting, which is happening this year. So they definitely face some challenges. I wouldn't read too much into Biden's approval ratings, though, as far as trying to predict the 2022 elections, because if you look at the generic congressional ballot, when people are just asked, which party will you vote for in the next congressional election, Democrats are holding up pretty well. They seem to have, somewhere between a 2 and 5 point advantage over Republicans at the moment. So I don't expect any kind of landslide election in 2022, although it will be a real challenge for Democrats to try to hold on to both houses.
Well, in regards to the 2024 presidential election, it seems like former President Donald Trump is sort of making his rounds. He's raising some money, doing some campaigning. Do you see him as a real threat?
I think if he decides to run, he's probably the heavy favorite for the Republican nomination. As to whether he could win the general election, I think that's more uncertain. Looking at President Biden's approval rating, you have to remember that you can't beat something with nothing. And although Biden's numbers are low, they're higher than Trump's numbers at the moment. If you ask about approval of former President Trump, he's somewhere 4 or 5 points lower than Biden at the moment. And most of the leading people who would run to challenge Biden on the Republican side have fairly low national approval ratings as well. So it's certainly not impossible that he could run and win again, but I don't think that he's necessarily the favorite at this point.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Peyton Bell. Back to you, Kinsley.
Former President Bill Clinton is being treated at the UCI Medical Center to receive treatment for an infection. He was admitted for close monitoring and has been given IV antibiotics and fluids. Doctors say his white blood cell count is down and he is responding well to treatment. For the time being, Clinton will remain in the hospital.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a new executive order banning all entities in the state, including private businesses, from requiring proof of vaccination.
I've talked to Texans across the entire state who had to make a tough decision about choosing their livelihood of going to work and earn a paycheck to pay their bills and feed their family versus compromising their own beliefs and maybe compromising their health and doing something they didn't believe in. They needed this relief.
Not only is this a change from Governor Abbott's earlier insistence that private businesses be allowed to choose whether they would require proof of vaccination, but it also conflicts with federal laws that require government employees to be vaccinated. The new Texas legislation is also a challenge to President Biden's plan to have employers with over 100 workers require proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test twice a week. The fight continues over the controversial abortion law in Texas. President Biden announced today his administration will ask the Supreme Court to block the law that bans most abortions after 6 weeks. Lower courts in Texas have upheld the law.
The subject of the HBO docuseries The Jinx, 78-year-old Robert Durst, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Susan Berman. Durst, for months, denied involvement in the deaths of his wife, Kathleen Durst, and friend Berman. But prosecutors convinced the jury of his involvement after he revealed key details in his docuseries. Now Durst's attorney says that they will appeal the case. Major news in the NFL this week, as one of the most famous coaches in league history has resigned in the middle of a scandal.
With more on this is our sports anchor, Luca Evans. Luca, what can you tell us?
Yeah, guys, it's a doozy. Las Vegas Raiders head coach Jon Gruden has faced a lot of scrutiny this week after the Wall Street Journal and New York Times reported a history of offensive emails. In 2011, Gruden used racist language in an email to describe a black NFL Players Association employee. Later reporting revealed Gruden had used homophobic and sexist language in communication with other league members. There's another angle to this story involving long-standing misconduct within the Washington football team. I'll have more on that coming up in sports.
Also coming up on Chapman News, Brian Laundrie is still missing, while Gabby Petito's cause of death is coming out. What comes next in the story that's captivating the nation?
And it wouldn't be fall in California without fires? I'll tell you why fire season is now year-round, along with your 5-day forecast.
I'll be seeing you in all of our favorite places with laughter and warm embraces all day through.
Elmo loves you.
I love you too.
With free COVID-19 vaccines, sunnier days are ahead. Visit getVaccineAnswers.org.
I'll be seeing you.
Earlier this week, an updated autopsy report showed Gabby Petito's cause of death was manual strangulation. Coroner Dr. Brent Blue also revealed that Petito's body was in Wyoming's Bridger-Teton National Forest for 3 to 4 weeks before she was found. But the exact date of her death is still unknown.
When we talk about a timeline of death this far out from the death, that timeline could be plus or minus a week at a minimum.
Police are still searching for Petito's fiancé, Brian Laundrie, who hasn't been seen by his family since September 17th, while the FBI has charged Laundrie with the unauthorized use of a debit card belonging to Petito. At this time, Laundrie is only considered a person of interest in relation to her murder.
We have a new social media segment here on Chapman News, and Rachel King joins us in studio now to tell us about what's trending.
Give us the tea, Rachel.
Thanks, Jack. Let's take a look at what people have been talking about on social media.
The hashtag Coming Out Day, with almost 96 million views, continues to trend on TikTok following National Coming Out Day on October 11th. Users celebrated by sharing videos of their stories and support for one another to encourage a safe space on this special day. Some even took the opportunity to officially come out themselves. This includes the newest version of the flying red-caped hero, Superman. John Kent was trending on Twitter when it was announced that the character, the son of Superman, will have a bisexual relationship in an upcoming issue. Series writer Tom Taylor says, "Superman's symbol has always stood for hope, for truth, and for justice. Today, more people can see themselves in the most powerful superhero in comics." Also this week, Facebook announced plans to update its policies on online bullying and harassment. Facebook will now remove harassment that targets individuals. This includes banning hateful direct messages and comments. The social media giant will also add more protections for public figures, such as celebrities, elected officials, and journalists. Facebook says any content that degrades or sexualizes public figures will be removed. These changes come after whistleblower Frances Haugen's congressional testimony accusing Facebook of prioritizing profit over its users' best interests. That was what has been trending on social media this week. Now back to you at the desk.
Some Chapman students have turned the uncertainty of the pandemic into an opportunity to start their own businesses. Reporter Tiffany Chen has the story.
Brandon Moe, a senior finance major at Chapman, started his own vintage reselling business called Wishlist OC over the pandemic.
We sell sneakers, we sell Jordans, Yeezys, Dunks, we sell vintage clothes, we sell designer clothes like Chrome Hearts, Supreme, Off-White, and we also sell film cameras.
Brandon and his co-workers hosted a pop-up of the store over the weekend, attracting customers from Chapman and Orange County. Another one is scheduled in 2 to 3 weeks in Los Angeles, California.
Right when we opened at 12, we had like a huge flood of people. We had maybe like 50, 60 people in the first few hours. Sold a good chunk of our inventory. It was a proud moment, I guess.
Being in quarantine also helped students discover their true passion. Abby O'Connor, a senior strategic corporate communication major at Chapman, started her own jewelry brand, Ghost Girl Jewelry.
During the pandemic, I tried a bunch of different hobbies, like art, painting, and most of them didn't stick for me until I tried jewelry making. And I was just doing it for fun, nothing serious, just buying charms and things that I liked that I couldn't find in mass retailers that was cheaper, and then obviously the more high quality items at Tiffany's, Jared's, stuff like that, I couldn't afford it and it still wasn't my style. So I was like, if I can't find anything, why not just make it myself?
While it is hard to balance her jewelry business and school at the same time, Abby makes it work by coming up with a detailed schedule.
My schedule when I first started jewelry was super busy. So recently what I started doing is splitting up my jewelry tasks into different days.
For Abby, her business stemmed from a passion, so making profit is not her first priority.
I will always be working on my jewelry, whether it's quote-unquote successful or not. Even if it's not my full-time career in the future, it'll always be something that I would like to work on.
This is Tiffany Chen reporting for Chapman News.
Only 10 days after the oil spill, Huntington Beach has reopened after water quality testing showed that the water is safe. Surfers have swarmed to enjoy the Surf City waves. The Coast Guard investigators now believe the pipeline was likely hit by multiple ship anchors, with the first occurring a year before the split was discovered on October 1st. Since the spill, the Oiled Wildlife Care Network has recovered a total of 73 birds, with only 28 of them alive. Yet, this past Wednesday, they were able to release their first 2 birds back into the wild. But the cleanup is still underway. According to the Coast Guard, 5,500 gallons of crude oil have been recovered from the ocean. 13.6 barrels of tar balls have been recovered, as well as 250,000 pounds of oily debris from the shore.
Well, it's been lights out at Chapman this month as the university saw its second power outage in 2 weeks. An electrical wire went down on Schaefer and Sycamore, causing widespread blackouts in the area. Witnesses say they saw sparks.
All of a sudden, all of our power went out, and I was super confused. So I went upstairs to check,
and I saw my neighbor, and he was telling me it was probably something down the street, and then I turned to my right, and all of a sudden our power line just completely blows up, and obviously like freaked us out, and then it blows up a second time.
Chapman campus lost power, causing the cancellation of some classes and activities. According to Southern California Edison, the incident was caused by, quote, a foreign object and equipment. Fortunately, the power line was repaired and power was restored shortly after.
It's beginning to start feeling like fall, except for all the wildfires that shouldn't be happening now.
Danielle Burke-North joins us in studio to explain why the fires are here and why they aren't going anywhere.
Thanks, guys. With California's ongoing extreme drought, wildfire season is basically year-round. Orange Fire Captain Deputy Fire Marshal Ryan O'Connor says the next few months will be dangerous.
With almost no rain throughout the state, extremely dry vegetation, months at a time, and then more people moving into the wildland area. Combine that with the drought and the winds that we get in the fall, called Santa Ana winds, and it's right now it's just a recipe for disaster.
One of those disasters, the Alisal Fire, started this Monday near Santa Barbara. The fire burned over 16,000 acres and is currently only 5% contained. Many people had to evacuate, and also animals, like at the Channel Islands Marine and Wildlife Institute.
And our animals are safe away right now. Moving them is simple because we move animals every day. And we've had a fire out there numerous times. And so we're ready. And we evacuated Monday before they told us to. I'm just tired of fires, tired of evacuations, just like everybody.
Bree Breyer's family had to evacuate in last year's Silverado fire.
When you come back, you're just kind of like hoping that your house is still there. And it's just, it's a hard thing to fathom, just not having a place to live.
If you live in a wildfire-prone area, it's a good idea to call your local fire station now to ask about evacuation routes and how you can prepare. Now let's look at your weather forecast. Here in Orange, California, it is 86 degrees, nice and sunny outside. It's the perfect weekend to maybe enjoy some outdoor fall activities, go to a pumpkin patch, or start carving your jack-o'-lantern. Moving on to our national forecast, it's between the 40s to the 80s this week. In Seattle, Washington at 58, San Francisco at 73, starting to cool down in Las Vegas at 64 degrees, and Denver at 55. Still in the 50s, Minneapolis is at 53, and still cool in Chicago at 65. Along the East Coast, New York is at 77, and it's moving down, heating up in the 80s in Washington, Atlanta, Miami, and Austin. 83 at Atlanta and Washington, 84 in Miami, and 86 in Austin, Texas. Moving on to our Orange County forecast, we're getting a little bit in the 80s and the 70s. It's cooler along the coast, so 83 in Newport and 73 in Laguna, but it's warming up in the surrounding cities. We have 89 in Westminster, Orange at 92, and as well in the 90s in Irvine. Mission Viejo at 89 and slightly cooler at 85 in San Clemente. It's going to be really warm this month of October all throughout the nation. Let's go ahead and take a look at your 7-day forecast in Orange. Today, it's 91 degrees, and this Saturday it will also be 90, so it's going to be a nice warm weekend. But on Sunday, it'll be partly cloudy at 77 degrees. Monday, cooling down even more at 68 degrees, but heating back up on Tuesday, 72, Wednesday at 75, and even warmer on Thursday at 81. This week, the lows will be in the 50s, with the lowest of 50 and the highest of 55, with an exception of Saturday at 61. That's your weather forecast for the week. I'm Danielle Burke-North. Back to you at the desk.
And coming up on the Best Campus Sports Show, we'll take a deep dive into the Jon Gruden situation and why he may not be the only one losing his job.
When you adopt a shelter pet, you discover their unique When you adopt a shelter pet, you discover their unique mix of all kinds of traits.
Where'd Wiley go? Where's Wiley?
Ah, there she is. Pa, do you remember being an ancient wolf? Do you ever feel the call of the wild?
You're a renegade cop, and I'm a con woman with nothing to prove. But together, we could really solve this murder. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but all of them are pure love.
Great to have you back with us for the best campus sports show. I'm Luca Evans, and today's segment is all about coaches. Some are getting fired. Some could be fired really soon. Some have already been fired. Stay tuned, and we'll break this down. But first, a quick update on your local Dodgers who just knocked off their rival San Francisco Giants 2-1 last night to advance to the Major League Baseball playoff semifinals. A bit of redemption for Cody Bellinger, who, to be honest, had one of the worst regular seasons I've ever seen from a star player, but came through last night with the eventual game-winning single. The Dodgers will face the Atlanta Braves in the National League Championship Series, which starts tomorrow morning. In the biggest story of the week, Jon Gruden has resigned as head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders after a New York Times investigation into his email history found a pattern of racism, homophobia, and sexism.
Last Friday, the Wall Street Journal reported Gruden sent Washington football team president Bruce Allen an email using a racist term to describe DeMaurice Smith, the executive director of the NFL's Players Association. A few days later, the New York Times published an investigation into years of further offensive emails Gruden had sent, including the use of homophobic language to describe Commissioner Roger Goodell, insults towards female referees, and the sharing of photos of topless cheerleaders without their consent. Before his resignation, Gruden had this to say to the media following the Raiders' loss against the Bears.
I'm not a racist. I can't tell you how sick I am. I apologize again to D. Smith.
The Raiders made the announcement that Gruden resigned shortly after the New York Times discovery, quoting Gruden as saying, "I never meant to hurt anyone." Raiders general manager Mike Mayock said the organization stood by owner Mark Davis's decision to accept Gruden's resignation. The Raiders have replaced Gruden with assistant coach Rich Bisaccia, who will be the interim for the rest of the season.
A spokesperson for the NFL said that comments against Smith were appalling, abhorrent, and wholly contrary to the NFL's values. But those values are worth questioning, as this Gruden discovery is the latest in a line of bad looks for the league. The emails were leaked from an investigation into workplace misconduct of the Washington football team, which began after 41-time female employees came forward with reports of sexual harassment. That investigation officially ended in July with originally just a $10 million fine and what amounted on a slap on the wrist for owner Dan Snyder, but many are hoping for more punishment in the future. Raiders owner Mark Davis gave ESPN a cryptic message Wednesday morning. The NFL has all the answers. The NFL Players Association, among others, are petitioning the league to release all 650,000 emails from the investigation. That means more actions like Gruden's could be exposed in the near future. Speaking of disgraced coaches, the Jacksonville Jaguars' Urban Meyer is in the hot seat after video emerged of Meyer getting touchy with a woman at a bar in Ohio. Spoiler alert, that woman was not his wife. Folks, this video speaks for itself. Talk about illegal use of the hands. More pictures emerged of Meyer posing with other women at that same bar. Rather curious. Hey, Urban, maybe instead you should have been focusing on helping your team actually win a game for once. Meyer has since apologized to the team for his actions and for being a distraction. In the wake of the incident, his wife, Shelley, said she'll be leaving Twitter since there is so much hate and slander. She tweeted, "We all make mistakes. We are all sinners." Jaguars owner Shad Khan said Meyer will have to earn back the organization's trust, but Meyer did not consider resigning. Well, that's about all the coaching drama I can handle for one afternoon. Now, on to Promise Johnson with entertainment.
Star Trek meets reality as Captain Kirk goes to space in real life. We'll have his reaction after the break.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. As it turns out, we have very similar personalities. And this cat makes me make art because he's always motivating me to take pictures of him, to draw pictures of him. He just is motivating artistically. It's just that simple. Well, he's my best friend, but a lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
Hey guys, I'm Promise Johnson with this week's entertainment. Let's jump right into it with news from one of the most famous singers in the world. Yes, the rumors are true. Adele has finally released a new single after her 5-year hiatus. Her single, Easy on Me, dropped last night and it had us all in tears. With it, she announced her highly anticipated album 30 that comes out on November 19th. And speaking of stars, actor William Shatner finally gets to see outer space up close, just 55 years after his role as Captain Kirk on Star Trek. Shatner, who is now 90 years old, became the oldest person to fly into space this week. He flew on the New Shepard, made by Jeff Bezos' rocket company, Blue Origin. The actor spoke about the experience.
I'm so filled with emotion about what just happened. It's extraordinary, extraordinary.
The rocket was supposed to launch into space this past Tuesday, but due to Santa Ana winds, it got delayed by 1 day. Now, while we all wait for the new Home Alone to come out, the best thing to do is find some movies to get in the Halloween spirit. Luckily for you, we got you covered with the scariest horror movies of all time that are sure to have you hiding under the covers.
If you love the oldies, watch The Shining. The film takes place in a hotel that is considered to be haunted in real life too. It's more of a psychological horror movie rather than a thriller, but it is sure to have you questioning everything. If you want a movie about nightmares that will also give you nightmares, watch Nightmare on Elm Street. Witness Freddy Krueger terrorize teenagers in their sleep. And if you want a newer horror movie with lots of jump scares like The Conjuring, watch It. The original film came out in 1990 and the remake in 2017. You'll never look at clowns the same, and I'm sure the clown industry crumbled after this movie was released. Lastly, if you hate predictable horror movies, watch Annabelle Creation. You never know when something is going to pop up around the corner or what to expect about the plot.
Well, that's it for entertainment this week. I'm Promise Johnson. Back to you at the desk.
Be sure to double check your Halloween decorations this year to ensure none of them are missing pets. Believe it or not, Animal Rescue was called last week to save an escaped tarantula. Come to find out, it was a spooky Halloween decoration.
Ugh, I don't blame them. I hate spiders.
Actually, Jack, unpopular opinion, I don't hate spiders, but I think they're kind of cute.
That's it for us this week. Don't miss an episode of Chapman News at www.chapmannews.tv and follow us on social media at Chapman News. I'm Jack Hull.
And I'm Kinsley Rolfe, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same place.
There we go.